There's 5 things that I do at the beginning of the year to set up strategy for my team or department, and I've coached others on doing this as well. There's a lot of structure to it and steps, so you may want to pick and choose what works for you. I'm not a highly structured person, believe it or not, but I've found that when it comes to this, being more structured and intentional sets everybody up for success. Discuss the big picture. We're basically looking outside of what we do every day and looking towards the future as well. And that's just a big discussion that we'll have where we talk about what are the trends, people bring in ideas, and then we discuss it and we really focus on what future do we want to see a year from now? How does that line up to the company? How does that line up to what our function is up to, the trends going on in our world? And then what does that mean for the individual? So we start the year off that way. I try to make it fun, try to make it more of like a team building thing. And it's a little bit like, great, I've got my head stretched around all the possibilities, but now how do we ground that in something? The next thing that I do is, as much as we've talked about the business, I want to touch base with the individual and find out what their big picture is. And so this is my version of a career conversation, but I call it a motivation conversation because I want people moving away from the traditional promotion raise only discussion. And what we start off is we talk about what have their experiences been that have, increased or inhibited their motivation. I'm doing that for my own knowledge, but also to help them build a self-awareness around what matters to them. Then we talk about what are their expectations in terms of what support and reward looks like from me, from the team, from the organization. And I can manage their expectations a little bit. Is it realistic? Are they going to be able to get that support? Can I maybe shift and change and flex my leadership style or, kind of set the team up differently? And we get to just come in a little bit more intentional about how we talk about things. Now we're going to start to get really practical about things. I start having them put together their goals, and we follow a structure of what I call their performance plan. And each person's going to have a performance plan. And it breaks down to 3 business goals and 2 development goals. And it stays that number no matter what they've got going on. And here's how that happens. They break their job down into 3 core buckets. What are your primary responsibilities in your job? And then we start to look at, based on each bucket, what is the goal that you want to have for each of those buckets. So for example, mine is often program management, client management, or people management. So what do I want to achieve in client management this time next year? What impact do I want to see? And I write a goal out for that. Now I might have a ton of different clients, so it doesn't mean that all I have is 3 things to do, but I think that's part of the thing where goal setting starts to be more like task listing versus strategic goals. And it's the idea of I'm setting a strategy for this area of responsibility, and then all the projects, meetings, emails that I do, I figure out how does that support this bigger picture strategy that I'm trying to achieve in the goals that I have. Then we look at 2 development goals. One short term. That means how do we develop you to get good at the job that you're currently in, or to reinforce all that you're doing in the role that you're currently in. And then one's long term, and that's focused more on what do you eventually want to be able to do with your career? And then how do we develop you this year to continue to prep you for that? And that could be climb the leadership ladder. It could be expand out your area of influence, or it could just be really deep dive your subject matter expertise, whatever it might be. So that plan is in place. I can use that plan to make sure that I'm aligning with what my own manager, my budget kind of sets up for. What approvals do we need to get? And so ideally, that's what I run through with my manager, and we get that all cleared off. And we're really walking out with a solid plan. And once all that gets approved, then we sit down and I do one last thing, and I make sure that there's a development plan in place for those 2 development goals. And the reason I do that is this to me is the career management that a lot of people are hungry for. They might call it growth and development opportunities. I tend to see that be very reactive and kind of, like, hey, I want to go to this event. Sure, I'll sign off on that. I've done career development with you. And it's very reactive and tactical. It's not strategic. So we've got these goals, one that's going to reinforce their job now, and then one that's going to reinforce their long-term development. Let's make that a reality.